Sitting on the track, my heart was already racing. I turned my head to the left and saw my father with the biggest grin on his face. I turned my head back to the front and took a huge gulp as the both of us were about to conquer the tallest, fastest roller coaster on earth, King Ka. Dad had never been on this ride before, so we were both experiencing it for the very first time. As we waited to be shot off, my head traced the track up the 460-foot tower we were about to ascend. This was one of the scariest moments of my life. Dad's hand was too far to reach, so the comforting was all left to myself. Dad enthusiastically shouted,
"This is it."
This definitely was it, the mother of all roller coasters. I could not believe how I agreed to do this with him, but I thought, I might as well face this now than never. 10 years prior to riding that exhilarating roller coaster, I was 6 years old, and still going on the kiddie roller coasters in Looney Tunes Seaport at Six Flags Great Adventure. However, my father thought it was a good time to graduate from the smaller rides and start experiencing much bigger rides. It was a dark and eerie October night. As my family and I were about to exit the park, we passed this roller coaster called Rolling Thunder. I stood and faced it, and just stared at the people on the ride about to climb up the massive hill. This roller coaster looked extremely fun.
Want to go on?
Yeah, let's go. We then left my little sister and mother as we got on the line. I could hear the roller coaster whiz past me with screaming guests. I could see their hands up in the air and their grinning faces as they zoomed all around. That was going to be me soon. I was so excited I could hardly wait on line. The roller coaster was wooden and smelled of cedar. Dad warned me that this ride was built in the 1970s, so it was most likely going to be really rickety. As guests exited the ride, I could see some not-so-enthused people, such as a crying girl who looked about my age. I really hoped that would not be me at the end of the ride. 15 minutes passed, and my dad and I were getting ready to board. My stomach began to get queasy, and it felt like butterflies were fluttering inside of me. My body began to quiver, and my teeth began to chatter. A slight chill brushed across me. Dad saw how nervous I looked.
You don't have to do this if you're not ready.
I took a deep breath and shook out my body. No, I'm ready. Let's do this.
That's my girl. You gotta conquer your fears someday.
He embraced me with a hug and assured me that I was going to be okay and that I was going to love this. I nodded my head slightly. Dad suggested that we sit in the back because it was the best seat on the train. The ride attendants came around to check their seatbelts. Before I knew it, we were off. The train turned away from the station and started towards that massive hill I saw earlier. This time, Dad and I were climbing it. The shakes and shivers began to appear again. Dad saw how nervous I looked yet again and tried to distract me.
Look over there, at the parking lot.
I slightly nodded my head.
See the zombies over there scaring people?
Again, I slightly nodded my head. We were nearing the top of the hill. The breeze was becoming stronger. I could not believe how high we were. Right before we approached the very top, Dad wrapped his arm around me as a sign of assurance, and I took a gulp. This was it. All of a sudden, we dropped. I was in absolute shock. Not a scream came out of me. The hill was taller than I thought it was. As we zoomed up the second hill, I finally caught my breath and began to scream. I could hear Dad laughing beside me. He was having an absolute blast at my reaction. We went up and down more hills, smaller than the first one, and also some quick bumps before we finally reached the station. As the train stopped, I took a huge sigh of relief. I could not believe it. I had just conquered my first big roller coaster.
So, how was it?
Awesome! Dad laughed and applauded. As soon as we got off the ride, I ran to the exit to meet my mom and sister. Mom, did you see us? She smiled and nodded.
You should have seen her face. She was speechless until the second hill, and then she screamed bloody murder.
We all laughed and made our way out of the park. Back on King Ka, I was having an emotional breakdown. It was almost too much to handle. The announcer began the countdown. 5. Oh no, panic. 4. I'm not going to make it. 3. I quickly recalled the memory of Dad and I rolling thunder. 2. Although I could not physically touch Dad's hand, I felt it emotionally around me in a safe hold, and from then on I knew I was going to be fine. 1. My father had taken me on a lot of roller coasters for the first time. I believed that without him being there and assuring me that I would be all right, I would have been much more fearful. To this day, I still feel Dad's warm embrace and hear him telling me that everything is going to be okay whenever I come across a nerve-wracking event. He taught me that one day, you must learn to conquer your fears. The earlier you start, the more fearless you will become.